When I was very young, I used to go to church with my parents. I also saw my parents praying, and I was impressed by their prayers. Although I always believed in the existence of God, I was still confused about some of the teachings and beliefs of Christianity, especially when I encountered some difficulties. I also used to doubt whether I was devout enough to truly experience God's presence and blessings. It wasn't until I was 25 years old that I experienced something that changed my life. It allowed me to truly give my heart to God. This experience changed my life and brought me closer to God. As a girl, I used to care a lot about my appearance. I often kept a slim figure by controlling my diet. However, this habit gradually evolved into anorexia. This mental illness prevented me from taking in enough nutrients and caused me to become progressively weaker. My anorexia began at the age of 21, when I ate very little food every day, and sometimes even skipped meals. Although I knew this practice was bad for my body, I felt very satisfied. Because I felt I was in control of my body and my appetite. However, this behavior gradually became a psychological disorder, and I began to develop a strong fear and disgust of food, and even felt sick. My weight also dropped dramatically. By the time I was 25 years old, my anorexia had become very severe. I couldn't even perform normal daily activities. My family and friends were very worried about me, and they urged me many times to see a doctor and receive treatment. However, my psychological condition was already very bad. My physical condition was getting weaker day by day, and pain and discomfort had become my daily routine. The medication and surgery did not bring me any real improvement, and I felt very disappointed and helpless. I began to question whether I had the strength and courage to continue to face this difficult situation. However, I felt warmth and strength when I saw my family and friends constantly praying and caring for me. I knew I could not give up easily and had to keep going. At this time, my faith became my support. I began to pray to God, pouring out my confusion and pain to Him, hoping that He would bring me strength and peace. However, my health condition still did not improve and I became weaker and weaker. Because of my thin body type, I felt the strange looks from the outside world. This made me feel very lonely and helpless. One night, I suddenly felt that my breathing became more and more difficult. At the same time, I felt a violent nausea, and I began to feel very uncomfortable. My body kept trembling, and the trembling became more and more violent, and I felt like my body was shaking like in an earthquake. I thought it was only temporary, and I tried to calm down and calm myself down. However, I didn't get better. My legs had no strength left, and I felt like I could collapse at any moment. I started to feel scared that I would lose consciousness and that I would die. Finally, I collapsed on the floor of my bedroom. My consciousness gradually became blurred, and everything around me began to become blurred and unreal. Suddenly, I felt that my consciousness was no longer confined to my body, it flew out of my body like a free bird. I looked at my thin self on the ground and I was very shocked. I never thought that I would leave my body in such a state. I saw that my body had become unusually pale and thin. Because I hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time. Even though I had left my body, I could still feel the intense pain and discomfort. It tormented me like a demon. I felt my soul was dissipating and my life was passing away. I tried everything I could to bring myself back to normal, but nothing worked. I felt like I was trapped in a transparent cage. I heard my mother's footsteps running up the stairs. I felt like a bystander, watching my body lying on the floor. I tried to call out to my mom, but my voice seemed to be swallowed up by the darkness. I began to feel scared and I called out again, but still got no response. Just then, I saw a huge black hole appear above my head. It kept spinning as if to swallow up all my consciousness and thoughts. When I went through that tunnel, it was pitch black all around me. I felt like I was floating in the air, and my body was very light. I saw a faint point of light ahead of me. Finally, I passed through that light and a beautiful view appeared in front of me. I was surrounded by a variety of flowers, all of which emitted an enchanting fragrance. I observed each flower carefully, and every detail was so perfect. There was also a turquoise meadow in the distance. All the pain was far away from me. I knew I had reached heaven. I saw a figure appear in front of me. That person was my grandmother. I quickly walked up to my grandmother. She looked very young, as if she had returned to her 30th year. I knew she had been living in heaven for many years, but she looked exactly as I had seen her when I was a child. She died of cancer when she was 72 years old. I was just a little kid then and didn't understand the meaning of death. Now I am very happy to see that she is living a happy life here. When my grandmother asked me if I wanted to go see Jesus, I felt a surge of excitement in my heart. I immediately answered aloud, yes, yes. I had always longed to meet him. My grandmother gently held my hand, and we walked together through the meadow. My eyes suddenly became bright. In the light of the glow, I saw a figure walking toward us. As he came to me, I realized it was Jesus. When I saw him, I felt something indescribable in my heart. I burst into tears. He looked at me tenderly, as a mother does with her child. It was as if all the restlessness was released in his eyes. I told him that I had suffered from anorexia and that people around me were very indifferent to me. He told me that he knew everything I was going through. He let me know that his love and care was always there for me. He said that everything would be okay. I felt healed of my broken heart after hearing his words. I noticed his appearance. He had dark brown hair and brown eyes and looked powerful. He was wearing a simple robe with no ornaments. It made me feel that he was a very simple man, yet with infinite wisdom and power. I said to Jesus, "You are a very handsome man." He just smiled and replied, "Thank you, but appearance is not the most important thing." Then we both laughed. I looked at him and thought his words made perfect sense. He seemed very gentle and had a reassuring feeling. We also talked a lot about life. Many of the questions I had were answered. I felt like I had established a special connection with him. Jesus told me to go back and tell everyone what I had seen. I said firmly, "I will." He looked at me, then extended his arms to me and held me tightly in his embrace. At that moment, I felt a strong sense of love and strength, as if the whole universe was behind me. It filled my heart with courage and hope. It was a wonderful time that I will never forget. The moment I returned to my body, I felt a strong shock as if I had fallen from a high altitude. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in bed. I missed that wonderful place where there was no sorrow or pain, only warmth and peace. I touched my head and felt a little dizzy. My mother asked me with concern if I needed to go to the hospital. I shook my head. I told her that I just needed to get some rest. I lay in bed, thinking about everything that had just happened. I missed the beauty of being there, but I also knew that I had my own mission and responsibilities to fulfill. When I woke up the next day, I felt very hungry. I hadn't felt this kind of hunger in a long time. I ate a lot and enjoyed every bite of food. I was able to taste the flavors and textures of the food, and the feeling was very satisfying. It was the first time in years that I was able to enjoy food with such pleasure. The next day, my mother took me to the hospital. He examined my body, but he didn't find anything unusual. A few days later, the doctor called me to say that he wanted to come and see me because he had found something strange. He told me that my kidney function was back to normal, which surprised him a lot. The doctor could not explain why my kidneys had suddenly returned to normal. Only I knew the reason. Jesus touched me, and he healed my body and soul. A month later, I returned to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor was surprised to find that I had gained a lot of weight and my body had become very healthy. When I returned from the hospital, I gathered the courage to tell my mother about the experience. However, she didn't believe me. Especially when I mentioned that I had seen my grandmother. She thought I must have heard something about her from someone else. But in fact, I had never heard anything about my grandmother, and I knew nothing about her except that I had seen her picture. I described more details about my grandmother. I believed that such descriptions would convince my mother of my experiences, but she still doubted what I said. I was very disappointed that my mother could not believe me. Finally, I chose to remain silent. They thought I was crazy or lying. However, I knew it was a real experience and the feeling was indescribable. I know that heaven is my home. I will be reunited with Jesus again. Even though many people don't believe my story, I don't care. I know that God is all around us and that His presence is real. No matter what I face, I have a greater faith and strength to face it. I know that God is there for me and will protect and guide me.